This is probably the video I had the most fun making this whole year. Fantasy books are everywhere and they are extremely popular, but how do you find ones that are safe for your children, that have good family values, Christian values if you're like me, and that also aren't too dark, too many adult topics, like all the things. You want something that is magical and creative, but not going to compromise your values, even if they're not written by Christian authors. In fact, I don't think a single book on my list is written by a Christian author. I didn't go find these all that focus on the family. These are just books that I have read to my children. I felt like were still really good fantasy books for Christians. I take that back, at least one of them I know I've seen a focus on the family. I think fantasy can be tricky for parents trying to find books for their kids. I know so many moms that have said, I don't know what books are okay. These books that are being promoted or pushed at or recommended to my children, and then I open them up and I find some stuff that I'm like, whoa, that should not be in a book written for a 10-year-old. Couldn't agree more. That's why I've read every single one of these, all of them, because I needed to know firsthand if I was okay with my kids reading them. Books have power, books can influence, and so I take reading very seriously. I don't think of it as just like a boring pastime. Obviously, I don't think it's boring at all, but I also don't think of it as just an innocent pastime. I know that books can influence my children, and so by golly, I'm gonna read them and make sure I'm okay with them before I pass them along. So what do I look for? I look for my own values, and so I can't speak to everybody's values. I am looking for things that are encouraging, right and wrong, good and evil. There is a separation that's important to me. Things that I want instilled in my children: truth, honesty, courage, bravery. These are things that I want my children to see as good and positive. And quite frankly, I just would like that to be instilled in them, that those are quality traits, right? And then like darkness is clearly evil, clearly bad. I'd like a distinction of the two, especially in children's books, okay? I understand that there are some nuances there in adult books, but when you're thinking of a child's book, think about like Chronicles of Narnia, there's a clear distinction of good and evil. Our children read a lot, and I want books that encourage wonder and beauty and creativity, not witchcraft, not other things that are promoted in today's world. First one up, and do not skip this because there's more. I have to give a little snippet, okay? First one up, Keeper of the Lost Cities. Now, Keeper of the Lost Cities is a massive series. I think we're at book 9.5 books. The last one I read was from Keith's point of view. So wherever you're at, like by the time that you're watching this video, maybe there's more, but that's the last one I had read too. And it's a very expansive series. It's got elves, a magical world, and it's very pretty and like magical. Side note, it's clean, it's exciting. Some books later in the series, because she grows up, like it starts out when she's like 10 or 11, but at the end of like where we're at now, she's like, I don't know, 14, 15, I don't remember exactly. They do make the books very back to back. Wherever we're at now, they're having relationships. She's having like first kisses. And also when Keith goes into the human world, there's multiple characters brought in that are in same-sex relationships. That did not happen until that book, the book with, so I read, like 9 books leading up to that, and that was the first time it's ever brought up. Because I read them with my kids, I, as the adult, can just skip that sentence. But you can't always do that, like if you're handing these books to your kids. So I just want that, and that is the only thing like that in this whole list. So all the rest I would hand to my children, just to be clear. Things I like how creative it is. I like the friend groups. I like that she is constantly like relying on her friends. I like the relationship she has with her parents and her foster parents, and then like her adoptive parents. Those are things I like. I also just like a good story, and there's lots of right and wrong, and there's lots of like dangerous situations. Those are fun to read, and it was well written. It was very well written. So we enjoyed the series as a family together. Sophie is the main character. She obviously has like a good moral compass. She's always wanted to do what's right, even if she makes mistakes, which happens in real life. She'll do things where she like sneaks away from her bodyguard and gets caught in a bad situation, but I still think it's good for us to read those kinds of things, and I don't want my kids to never read about anything bad ever happening. Boundless was really fun and surprised me. It's about a boy who gets on a train in Canada, and while he's on the train, he learns that there's a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch on the train too. And I did not know it was a fantasy until that moment. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was totally off guard. Anyway, my 12-year-old loves Bigfoot, Sasquatch stuff. And so reading that, and then in the story, like the boy like befriends the Sasquatch, and they're also on this train going across Canada. And that's like got a lot of descriptions of the forests, which I liked. So it was just very fun in that way, very just fantastical and sweet. And so there's some key elements here. We've got the circus, we've got Bigfoot, and we've got these children that are on the train. So if that sounds like a book that your kid would enjoy, I would recommend. It was a fun, sweet story. We've listened to it multiple times. Peter and the Starcatchers. Now, I didn't read this to my kids. I just read it to myself because I was like making sure it was okay. And it was actually pretty funny. It's like the prequel to Peter Pan. It's like basically how things become magical. So it's just very whimsical. Obviously themes of like good and bad. There's mermaids. There's all the things that are in Peter Pan. But it's how did this all come to be? If you've ever wondered what happened, how Peter Pan came to exist, and how they learned to fly, or how they got the pixie dust. This will answer those questions. Echo, oh my goodness, rocked my world. This book is so good. Now, it starts out like a fantasy, and then it kind of turns into what feels more like historical fiction, but the start is fantasy. And so I included it in this list because of that. It is a very emotional book. I don't remember how much of it I cried for. I cried for a decent amount of it, for sure. There's 3 different storylines, 4 if you count the beginning one, the magical element in the beginning. So there's like 3 main different storylines, and it's spreading across time, mostly across like locations though. I'm trying to remember where everybody is in the world, but I know we have 1 in Germany and then 2 in America. Yeah, 1 in Germany, 2 in America. And there's a very strong musical undercurrent, which I love music, and there's a very big musical element to the storyline. If you like fantasy, music, and historical fiction, say less, this is the book for you. It's also a beast. It's like pretty big. I highly recommend. I read it to my child when I think he was 14, and it left a big impact. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. Because it's set during World War II, you can just expect it to be very moving. I don't feel like I need to explain that any plot set during World War II is going to have a lot of elements of right and wrong and morals and fairness and all the things, but you can imagine. Samantha Spinner and the Super Secret Plans is just like a very quirky, silly, I would say it's like a slightly younger age group, but maybe not. Like, I enjoyed it and I'm an adult, so it's a very fun, silly story. It's like more humor than magic, but it is still very magical. There's secret tunnels that go from the US to Paris or Egypt or England and all these things that aren't actually real. Anyway, it was a fun little magical story in that way. And it was very humorous. My daughter enjoyed it, and I read it to her when she was slightly younger, but my boys would have found it was like very silly, right? Because at least with my children, the boys love the silly stuff. Not saying all kids are the same in that way, but my boys loved it when things were silly. Jinxed is a like tech futuristic type fantasy, but still really interesting. I feel like it had a lot of unique perspectives and ideas, and still like very like somebody thought of this and was like, oh, what could the future look like, and what could be the things that people are trying to do and accomplish and figure out. I just admire creativity and imagination, and so in that way I found the book to be intriguing. It's about a girl. She goes to like a tech school. She has a animal. All of the kids have animals. In this case, their animals are not alive. Their animals are all robotic, and they like fight each other. Anyway, it's really interesting. The cat is named Jinx, and so the book is named Jinx, and my daughter named her cat Jinx because this was just such a fun read to her. It's great for kids that want to talk about like gadgets, technology, and AI, and incorporate AI into our life and what that might look like. Really a good book for those kinds of conversation starters. My favorite middle grade and young adult fantasy of all time is the Redwall series. It's a classic. I am actually rereading 2 of them right now. I'm listening to Mossflower and I'm reading Martin the Warrior out loud. And honestly, I didn't remember how much I loved this story until I got into it again like last month when I started reading those books again. Absolutely love them. I love the bravery, I love the courage, I love the friendships, I love the hard working, I love the like doing good. I'll just give you like one very small example. The prisoners escape too, and they are trying to get away, but they want to go and like get an army and come back and save the rest of the prisoners. And let's just think about that for a second. How brave, how scary, how noble to escape and then be like, I'm gonna go and save everyone else. They go and they run into a troupe of performing like circus players. These creatures I'm talking about are like squirrels and mice and rabbits and things like this. Anyway, the whole group decides without even talking about it that of course they're going to join and go and help and rescue all the prisoners. And it's just like things like that where they're doing the right thing, they're all helping, and there was no question. The 2 that had escaped, the 2 prisoners, I did not ask the circus performers to help them. It was just like, of course we're gonna help you. You don't have to ask. We're gonna go and rescue your families or whoever is left in the prison. And I just love that. Also another book where there is no moral gray area. It's like right and wrong. And there's clearly the bad guys and clearly the good guys. And so we're reading Martin the Warrior right now. And I would love a resurgence of Martin the Warrior and the Redwall books in general. And if there's just one thing I could say about Redwall, like the most epic series. There's been stories that I love that are epic. We'll say Brandon Sanderson. He's got some pretty epic stories. I love his books. But Redwall, my goodness, talk about just absolutely incredible. Like the language has all the animals talk in like a different dialect. The moles talk differently, the rabbits talk differently, the hedgehogs talk differently. And it's just absolutely astounding and like the imagination involved. I would have loved to meet that author. He passed away a long time ago, but I would have loved to have met him in person and just been like, you're incredible. Thank you for your contribution. Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians, like speaking of Brandon Sanderson, this was the first middle grade book I read by Brandon Sanderson, and I think it was the first book I ever read by him, now that I think about it. Yeah, and I remember listening to it. I was alone in my room, and I started it and I made it to like chapter 2, and I was like, okay, full stop. I gotta get my kids in on this because they're gonna love it. It's very like dry humor and expansive world building. Like if you know Brandon Sanderson's works, you know he's a masterful world builder, that man. My goodness. But Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians, just like all of his other books, have an incredible world. So just as an example, the libraries around the world, there's more to them. And in one of them, as an example, like Alcatraz bumps into like dinosaurs that live in there that have like glasses and are sitting there reading. And that paints a picture right there. And think of how much work it took to convince humans so we, were extinct. Anyway, it's just very funny. Like the dinosaurs in it are unlike any dinosaurs I've ever read about. Like these ones are like cognizant and can talk and have glasses and all the things, which is like a very funny story. I don't remember if I listened to the whole series or not. I think I listened to like 2 or 3 books in the series, but the first one for sure was really, really fun. In short, this is great if you have a child that likes humor, very fast paced, very much like, wait, what just happened? A lot of plot twists. And this one I would say has a lot of truth versus deception. What's your perception of what's happening? That is a great discussion in this book. There's a discussion for you, a topic for you, because it's wild. This is the book you could find to focus on the family, The Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. Remember the first time I read that and I was like, what? The Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness? But as you read more of Andrew Peterson's books, you'll find that he just likes to do that with his wording where it like, I don't know. It actually isn't my favorite because I'm like, let's just not have the same word, but it's okay. Lots of allegory. Chronicles of Narnia does the same thing where you can dissect it and find hidden meaning throughout. The Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, 1000%. You can do that for the whole book. Great book. Christian author, Christian book, talking about redemption, family bonds, loyalty, overcoming fear, destiny, lots and lots of good storylines. And I read it out loud to my kids, but it's one I would hand them to read as well. In fact, my 2 will just have read it by themselves after I read it to them. Very good Christian fantasy story. The Edge of Extinction by Laura Martin, I guess it would be considered like a dystopian. It's like sci-fi dystopian. So it's set, I believe, in the future, but It's set where humans are living underground, think the silo, but less terrible. Humans are living underground because dinosaurs have overtaken the world. And I have a dinosaur lover in my house, as do I think most parents, right? I have a dinosaur lover, and so I read that book with him in mind. I read it to them for him because the girl in the book, the main character, she goes above ground, I think on a quest to find family, and she is having to escape all these dinosaurs because dinosaurs have just taken over the world. That was a really fun read as well. Lots of bravery, teamwork. Yeah, I think there's some discussion topics around the fact that dinosaurs came back and then they took over. And not in their talking way like Alcatraz, more in that they're giant and have a lot of teeth. And so once they were released, nature took its course and they kind of had their way with the planet. Remember how I said I wasn't expecting this book to make the list? That book was Keeper of the Lost Cities. When I started that, first of all, I don't know. It was a few years ago. It's taken us a bit to get through that whole series. That book, I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did and the characters to grow on me. I was definitely a little skeptical because it wasn't a Christian author. I was a little bit afraid. Every single book that passed, I was afraid, are we gonna have some themes I'm not a fan of in this book? I was so happy. Up until the last book, I would not recommend Keith's storyline. We could have done without it. You don't need it for the story, and I wouldn't have read that just because he's in the human world. And the human world has more issues than the elfin world. I'd love to know if you guys have any fantasy books that you would recommend, that you trust to hand to your kids, that you think are really good. Feel free to share them. I think we should share more books with our friends and neighbors, just put it in the comments. I love book recommendations, but also I would love other parents to have good book recommendations. So feel free. If there's ones I only listed 10. There's hundreds, thousands of books. So feel free to drop those in the comments. If I get enough and I read them all, then I will make it part 2 because every single book that I recommend, I read. So I've read all these books partly because I want to know if my kids can read them and partly to share them with you guys so your kids can read them. Or just for you to decide if you're okay with your kid reading them because that's fair as well. I think everybody has a different set of standards and I just want parents to know oh, I'm okay with this and not okay with that kind of a thing. Fantasy doesn't have to mean witchcraft. And it doesn't have to mean dark and evil. It doesn't have to mean Norse mythology, right? It doesn't have to mean those things. And I still think in the same way that I love some the classics of the classical fantasies, Winnie the Pooh for Pete's sake. That is a fantasy, right? But we don't think of it like that. We're not oh, Winnie the Pooh, it's a middle grade fantasy novel. It is. That's not how you think of it. And so I just want to encourage you. Fantasy does not have to equal bad. I used to think that. I definitely fell in this mindset of I'm not letting my kids read fantasy. I totally was. I just didn't realize I was. Being careful and being aware of what our kids are reading, I do think that's important. And also teaching them to find the good books, find the ones that are going to teach good values and good morals and all the things. So important for our children. I hope this video is helpful. I'll see you guys again really soon. Don't forget to check out one of these other videos of other book lists or just homeschooling in general.